I'm a Sweden.
So we're just gonna go, right?
I'm Barbara Polanco. I'm an art director based out of the LA office in Ogilvy, California.
My name is Dora Osinde. I'm the CCO for Ogilvy, Germany, and I'm based in Berlin. Hi, Barbara.
Hi, Dora. It's good to see you. How are you today?
Good. Good to see you as well.
First of all, love your hoodie. So can you tell us about what was this fashion choice for today?
Thank you. And actually, I bought it in LA. And when we had the pre-conversation for this, you told me no brands. So I chose to go with a statement.
We love it. We love it. So let's start with our first one. So what's the first thing that catches your eye about creative piece, creative work?
Culture. It's a good reference. It's a good insight. It's something that requires you to not necessarily think about it for too long, but like it requires a little bit of background knowledge for you to get it. Obviously, it can't be too hard, needs to work. It's advertising, but still, I like when things have a reference into culture.
I agree. I think for me, it's a little more literal, and I think I can tie it back to culture. But the first thing that I notice about creative work or it's colors, usually. It has something to do with colors. And I think that definitely ties back to my Caribbean roots. They just kind of like set the mood for me. It just lets me know a lot about you, like what you're feeling. My energy like feeds off of that.
Interesting. Okay. I come from the writing world of things. It's like words and concepts, and you come from the art direction side of things. So that makes a lot of sense, for sure.
It's a good collide. So, what sense do you feel your nationality or your geographic location plays into your taste and into your point of view as a creative?
So Berlin has always played a big role in the way I work, in the way I view creative. And at the same time, where I grew up, which is a small city 200 kilometers south of Berlin, only Black kid in most spaces that I was in, the way I experienced the world or the way I would deal with creative rarely happened at home geographically, if that makes sense. The references were always somewhere else outside. It was the UK, it was the US. It was looking what are the other people doing that look like me? Because they didn't really exist where I grew up. So I think I actually find that quite lucky, because I think my viewpoint on creative and what inspires me and the references I like are actually quite international. And I really like that, despite the fact that maybe growing up like this isn't the easiest way to grow up.
You were just talking about being the only Black kid, like growing up in a lot of spaces. What does that look like throughout your life and at this point in your career, right? In this industry, is it still feeling like that?
You're in the LA office right now, correct?
Yes.
Tell me about the LA office first.
It's a nice small team. I started here in 2022, in January of 2022, and I was the one Black person throughout the entire, out of all of Ogilvy, California.
Okay.
That's, I would say that's a large part of the experience, but it is a small team. It's a very, everyone's really kind, really sweet, and a lot of people say that we have the startup vibe going for Ogilvy, for how big of an organization it is. And I think we feel that. I think I came in and people were just not understanding, my background and that kind of thing, but I've kind of proven myself. And I think as I've gotten to work on different projects at different capacities, people are understanding how I come from this very non-traditional background, but I do add value in a very interesting and unique way.
You were just saying you proved yourself. Did you feel the need to do that?
Yes,
And do you
100%.
think that's related to the way you look?
Yeah, the way I look, the way I speak, the way I just kind of see the world.
Okay. Well then, to maybe answer that question back, it reminds me of a story that actually happened at an Ogilvy. Somebody told me that during an Ogilvy meeting. I think it was maybe one of our global creative meets. It was a female CD. We were talking about her bosses in her life. And she said, you know what? I am dreaming of the day when I am working for a mediocre Black woman. And I'm like, what do you mean? And then she explained it to me. And she's like, well, many of the men I worked for were quite mediocre. All of the women, and there were just a few in her career who were her bosses, were absolutely fantastic, outstanding women. And she's like, I think we're reaching an interesting point when I don't get to say that about all of my female bosses, specifically the Black ones. If I look at the advertising industry in Germany and Europe, I think I am and that's just based on my own research, I could be wrong. I think I am the only Black woman with a CCO title in Europe in our industry. And that is nothing that makes me feel good. You could take it as like a special thing. You could be excited about this. I am absolutely not. And that has been my experience in the advertising world. And I was also asking about your experience in LA because I had a job where I had to go to LA a lot. And the first time I went to LA, I think it was 2015 maybe. And I was like expecting to see a lot of Black people. I was expecting to see a lot of Hispanic people walking into the office. I was like, oh, this is so exciting. This is going to be great. This is going to be such a good experience. And I walk into my company's office and it's just white people. The only people that didn't look like them were the people serving the food and cleaning the office. And I was like, what is going on here? Why is it this way? And I don't necessarily love that it didn't change that much since that day.
It's interesting you say that because I feel like the few times I've gotten to be on set, that's usually the case. Like if I get there early, people are like, are you your agency? You know, and I am usually the one Black person on set, unless it's like a PA or something. And I think that kind of can go into the next question. What is one part of this industry that you personally wish should and could change?
So this is an emotional answer to this question. And this is just like my last 2 weeks. I need less suits. I am currently dealing with a lot of the money people. And I get that. It's part of our industry. I think I don't want to be negative. I'm excited about working here. That's not what I'm saying. But overall, there are a lot of suits and we're dealing in creative. I want more creatives in the position of those suits. I would find that quite interesting.
I love that. I think from my side of things, I'm not necessarily dealing with suits, but I definitely want to see more non-traditional creatives come into the space. I just think we have a lot to say. There's a lot to learn, obviously, when you're coming into this and you're not familiar with, acronyms and the kinds of conversations or even like who you need to speak to, like whether it's on set, like what the hierarchy is. But we bring like really interesting insights. We bring really interesting references. It's just, I think there's power in like having a unique point of view in the world. And for me, I'm a first-gen American person. I'm a Black person. I come from the Bronx. And I think like that's something I never want to forget. You know what I mean? It's so important to who I am, but it's important to have people like that in the room because they have input that's very important. Like at the end of the day, we're talking to everyone. We're talking to the masses. So more creatives, more non-traditional creatives in the space.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I've actually always tried to hire like that. So when I had my own agency before joining Ogilvy, whenever I interviewed somebody and they would tell me how much they love advertising, that would be the moment for me when I would go, no, this person's probably not a fit. I hired DJs. I hired people who worked at festivals. I hired journalists. We can the agency piece, that's very teachable, right? Sort of the how to deal with clients, how to do a good presentation, that's very teachable. But I think taste and a certain intuition and a certain instinct for what's good creative, that I personally think is not teachable. So I scan for that.
I think too, that kind of leans into, if we can get into divine discontent, we know that's so big for Ogilvy, but can you define it for you?
I always say there are actually only two states as a creative. The one is, I'm definitely wrong in this job. I'm gonna go work at the supermarket somewhere. What am I actually doing? You're nervous about the quality of your work. You think everybody does that better than you do it. That's the one state. And the other state is, this is the best thing anybody has ever done in this world and everybody needs to see it. Both of them are not true. you're obviously not terrible at your job, and it's also quite rare that you create the best thing anyone has ever done. But I do think if you don't know how to access that state, you're never shipping. I do believe that if you don't hold yourself to that standard and then you get like very hyped and you get into that zone, that's the moment when you actually dare to show your stuff, which is usually part of your soul, right? You spent like time and energy and thoughts and ideas on that. I think that's the only state where you actually like ship it to the world. And somewhere in there to me is that piece around discontent. It's about it needs to be better and better and better and better.
Yeah, I think I have to second that for sure. I think having that discontent, it breeds better work. Before I got into advertising, my creative process was very much like very free. Like there wasn't a whole lot of structure. And it wasn't until I kind of like went to the one school and started learning all these things about like having the strategy behind it. One of the biggest lessons that I had to learn while I was doing that was understanding that it's a great idea, but I'm gonna have a better one tomorrow.
I often speak about it as we're industrial creatives. Like there's a reason I am not a painter or an author. I work in an agency. My job is a service job. My job is to sell things for our clients. And I think there's something in there as well. Yes, you can be super hyped about your idea. Yes, you think that's the greatest thing you've ever done. If client doesn't like it, it doesn't go. And I think you need a healthy distance to the work to do it for some time. I think if you don't have that, it's devastating.
Yes, yeah, definitely. What have you done or learned that definitely aided in your success?
So, and I feel that might sound a little controversial, but I think it's true. What we do does not matter at all. And there is a lot of beauty in that. There can be a lot of ease in that. It can also be very devastating, but we're not saving lives. The stuff we do is not important. There is no reason to do it for 80 hours a week. There is no reason to lose sleep over it. And by the way, the beautiful side of it is because it doesn't matter, we can have a lot of fun with it. That's why it's such a fantastic job. But the thing I did, or maybe the thing that happened to me that got me to that point was a burnout, a depression. I had just left a very big job in the entertainment industry. I was in between jobs. I was like out for 2 months and I didn't produce during that time. I couldn't. I had no ideas. There was nothing to take the ideas from. I was empty. And I had to figure out my self-worth, if you will. I had to figure out who am I if I don't produce? Who am I if there are no ideas? And the result obviously ended up being, I'm someone. I'm still me. It really doesn't matter. But I needed that experience to find sort of a healthy relationship to my job and this industry and the ego that's attached to it in a place where I couldn't produce.
I love that. I think the biggest lesson was understanding, and I've spoken about it before, so I think I can keep it brief, but understanding that my path in life, the things that I've accomplished, the things that I haven't, just my entire journey, it led me to being here. And you shouldn't negate any parts of it. There's learning in all of it, you know? And it's interesting, you were talking about you kind of had to go through this depressive stage to like learn that. I had an experience similar to that. I had moved to Australia when I was 18 and I was studying international relations. I was just taking a whole different path. And I always say it was a really rich experience because it was the first time I experienced like racism and like being the one Black person, all these things, but also it taught me about seeing the world outside of the lens of being American and just being in my little bubble, you know, in New York, which was great. But I think the biggest takeaway for me, and I didn't even realize I was depressed, you know? The biggest takeaway for me was one, I needed to do creative work. Like that is what is gonna make me happy. And then two, it was so important. And to this day, I think at the root of everything that I do, it's important to tell Black stories or to give a space for that, because often people see it as this like monolith, and we're not. There's Black people all over the world, and there are different cultures that are tied to it. And me, like, I'm a Black person from a Caribbean island that, you know, they speak Spanish. There are all kinds of people, but having that as being who I am and then moving that to being from New York, like, and growing up in America and all these things, I just have this very pointed experience. That's
I'm
my
always
answer.
very happy when I hear Black Americans say that and when Black Americans have that experience, because I feel there's sometimes a little bit of a clash maybe on or in regards to what a Black experience is and how it is very different in different parts of the world, and how our stories of, our parents or how our parents got to be in the country that we grew up in and all of that, how that's so nuanced and different.
Definitely. See, moving on, I really kind of want to touch on like the importance of having diversity in thought on your team.
So if we look at it from a business perspective, not an ethical perspective or a moral perspective, just a business perspective, the stats around which types of businesses are able to actually innovate would show that the more a business is able to replicate a society. So if I get it quite as close as to what the makeup of the general population of whatever that region, that country is, if I'm able to mimic that, I have a very high chance of actually doing something innovative. So there's a marker right there also for our industry to figure out how to create these rooms. The initial piece of creating these rooms is actually quite easy, I found. The other bit of maintaining them and making them healthy and respectful and safe, that's the difficult piece.
And I think that's the whole piece of like wanting to stay somewhere, or, I've been here for 5 years or whatever the case may be. It's tied for me to one, like who's in leadership, and two, the environment, like how they're fostering that diversity in thought. For me to be able to say that is offensive, right? That makes me uncomfortable, like whatever it is.
And it requires also for me to be able to hear that. It's one story I keep telling. We were prepping for an influencer campaign, some brand, I don't remember anymore. Like we show the selection of influencers and like my one Asian employee goes, well, you guys did great. They're like white people, Black people, different body types. There's not a single Asian person on this slide. And that was an interesting moment because now you get to react. And I was super proud of this team. And like the way this was handled was like, oh yeah, you're right. Let's fix that.
Yeah.
And I think that's the energy that's required.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And two, like seeing both sides of it, like you as a leader, me as, someone more junior. That's great. What time of day is it for you right now?
It is evening 6-ish. It's about to be 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Okay.
Which would make LA, what, 9?
9 a.m.
10?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay.
Okay, and then let's talk about a food you would never eat. And I mean never. You would never be caught dead ordering it, having it, cooking it.
That's probably meat. I've been a vegetarian for like 22 years now.
Okay. Wow.
So yeah, that would be meat, which is not a super creative answer, but it's the truth. How about you?
It's funny you say that. For me, I'm very picky with seafood. I just started eating it, like, I want to say maybe in the last 5 years, but controversial opinion, if it's too fishy, I don't like it.
No, that's not controversial.
So,
I get that.
Yeah.
Is there like a weird food combination that other people would say is disgusting, but you really love it?
I don't know. People wouldn't say it's disgusting. It's probably not appetizing, but one of my favorite meals is I like to have white rice with eggs and sweet plantains. It's like one of those.
That's
like,
not weird at all.
I mean,
that's
yeah,
like...
and you can add some ketchup on the side. Maybe that's where it starts getting a little bit weird, but that's one of those meals, like, I don't know how far I'll go in life, but I'll always want to eat that. Make some more white rice and the eggs. At all. What about for you?
Let me try to think of something German that would probably be weird for other people. I can tell you what the most controversial dishes we would discuss in Germany, and that would be pizza Hawaii. So that would be like, what is that? Salami and pineapple?
Pineapple on the pizza.
Yes. So Berlin obviously has a lot of Italians who live here, and it's been like the cause for fights, like people leaving the room telling Germans they're crazy for doing that.
Yeah, I mean, and listen, I'm a New Yorker. I shouldn't be saying it, but I do like pineapple on my pizza. I know it's controversial, but I do like it. The sweet and savory mixes, it does it for me every time.
All right.
Okay, I had a question about socks and sandals, but it's not if, it's why. Why are socks and sandals a vibe for you?
Look, it's a style thing. Like, Europeans know how to do that. We can pull it off. It doesn't look weird. It doesn't give dad, like, they're dangerous to it. Like, you need to know how to do it. But if you know, you know. And then it's cool.
Dora, thank you so much for your time. This was such a great conversation. I've learned so much. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.